Recently, I'm not sure why, been thinking about days gone by. Summer seemed to last so long, now I blink and they're all gone. Chopper bikes were so cool, an hour of TV after school. Top of the Pops was the thing to see, watching T-Rex on TV. All these things I remember and more. I was born 20 years after the war.
That song is called 20 Years After the War. Most of these songs were written during the time of the pandemic, and this was one of them. And I think when I became aware of my own mortality, as many of us did when we were seeing what was happening out there during the pandemic, I started to reflect, and I saw my mum and dad as well, and well, I didn't see my mum and dad because I couldn't go and bloody see them, could I? But I thought about my mum and dad, and it just suddenly just occurred to me that I was born in 1965 and the Second World War ended in 1945. And that was the same amount of time between 2020 and the millennium and the year 2000. That was 20 years, which to me in 2020 seemed like nothing, barely anything at all. I could think back those 20 years and it was like, wow, that was yesterday. And I realised that to my parents, 1965 was just 20 years after the end of the Second World War, which was the same amount of time from 2020 back to the year 2000. And that changed so many things in my mind, because I then started to think back to my childhood, and I started remembering that down the bottom of my road, in a place that we called the dump, which wasn't the dump, it was just a piece of ground that we used to go and play on as kids, there were still bomb craters there. From the Second World War as well, and that got me thinking again and just reminiscing on that childhood reminiscing thing, about chopper bikes. I don't know if you remember chopper bikes and tomahawks. They were a kind of cycle we had here, and the front wheel was small and the back wheel was big, and they looked fantastic. I always wanted a chopper bike. I never got one, but I always wanted one. But the reason I think I never got one is they were so blooming dangerous. My friend got one, and like many kids, when he put the brakes on a little too much because it was badly balanced, it just, the back just came up and went over the front. They were so dangerously designed, but they looked fantastic, and it just got me thinking about conkers and thinking, well, do kids play conkers anymore? I don't think they do, but for me, conker season was a real thing, and it was painful when you got the strings, and Action Man and Lego and Top of the Pops with T-Rex and the Slade and Sweet, and it just got me reminiscing, and that's what inspired the song 20 years after the war. It's not a kind of like things were better back in my day song. It's just an observation song, a kind of reminiscing song of how I felt about my childhood. That is 20 years after the war.